Hey, Deep Thinkers, this is Lori Marie, and I have Spirit Raw here with me today, and I'm super excited because it's very last minute, and she's very in tune with the universe and has lots of gifts and whatnot to share with us today. How are you doing, Spirit?
I'm doing pretty well. Okay, a little nervous being here, but thankful.
I've seen your TikTok content. You will do wonderful.
Thank you.
Um, if people do want to look you up on TikTok, how do they find you?
Yeah, so it's just at Spirit Raw, all one word, Spirit RA, on TikTok.
Awesome. So why don't you tell us all about you?
Yeah, so I really started off as a grid worker. So working with the earth, trying to, it's kind of like Reiki, but on Earth, like little chakra points and then like unblocking those things. So that's how I really got into astral travel since I started my whole process with grid working astral travel or in astral. And then I kind of just, in our group, in my spiritual group or in my shamanic group, we we kind of have everybody go off in different directions kind of thing, and then we all bring that together and then like build on our own knowledge. So we have meetings every week, um like in the astral realm. So we just all go on Skype, we just sit in silence, and then we do all of our conversation like in the astral realm.
Oh,
And then we
that's
come back out,
awesome.
and then, we just like confirmation as human beings. So we come back out and we're like, okay, so you talked about this, is that correct? And they're like, yes, that's what I talked about. And you talked about this. And then we kind of just exchange information, even though we had the whole meeting in the astral realm, but we just like human body confirmation.
Right. I think you must do that out of habit because you definitely tapped into me earlier today when I was about to text you and confirm our timing and if you had the right link, and then you messaged me and I was just like, she's in my head.
Yeah, I mean, we're all like energetically connected. Well, we're all connected on like some level, but then when we have a thought of somebody else, we make an energetic connection,
Oh, yeah.
usually on accident. So whoever thought it first, right?
Yeah, and you never know. It could just
Yeah.
be a mutual match, like because I
Hmm.
I definitely have that. I have exactly what you're talking about, and so what I've learned on my own shamanic path is that 90% of the time when somebody pops into my head, it's not because I'm thinking about them, it's because they're thinking about me. And
Hmm.
it's like an unconscious, excuse me, conscious phone call, so to speak. And I could usually really tap into the vibe. I can feel like what they might be worried about. It might not even be that they're thinking about me, but they might like know that I could help, or they, my friends all know that I'm an astrologer, or I just might be emotionally bonded with them well enough that when they pop into my head,
Yeah.
um, so and so when I and then the universe confirms it when they call me or they text me,
Right, right. Oh, definitely.
yes, I love confirmation. It's like,
Exactly. Yeah, I like to I talked about this a couple of times on my TikTok, but the difference between logic and spirit or energy even, because I use spirit as a very vague term of all things. With logic, like our mind has to think linear, like everything is always connected somehow, and it makes a nice little line to wherever it needs to go. So when something completely random, like out of left field, hits you, like most likely it is spirit. So then, as long as you practice your communication, you can figure out, okay, is this just like a wandering actual spirit person walking around? Is it my spirit guides or anyone on my spirit team? Like, is it somebody trying to contact me? Like, what is it? What's going on? For example, I think I remember I had sent an email to um, a very well known spiritual like person. If I can remember her name, not right now. But I had sent an email out, and they do a lot of like astral travel type of stuff. And so as I sent the email out, I would say like about 30 minutes later, I got the feeling that they were visiting me, like that they were just astrally like here, and I was like, oh, it's a couple of people, and I was just like, oh, okay. So I'm like, all right, so I know you guys are here, and so they just started like I started getting like random questions to pop up in my head, and I'm like, okay, I'm not just randomly asking myself these questions. So
Right.
it's them questioning me. So I was just answering, and it was almost like an astral, like half astral, half physical realm interview of sorts. And I was just answering these questions out loud as I could feel them asking the questions. So I was just like, this is such an interesting interview. I've never had
That
this
is,
before.
what's even more interesting is, so I've been studying different aspects of consciousness and shamanism.
Mm-hmm.
And I am absolutely working towards quantum shamanism. And we'll eventually have a book on it to help people sort of understand more about time and reality and what's really going on here, basically. And as more and more people are coming on board and starting to wonder what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
the more that people like yourself and I talk about it, the
Yeah,
more normal it starts to become, and more
exactly.
accepting. But as I'm learning about it, and kind of like an apprenticeship almost, whereas you seem to already be doing a lot of the work, I'm noticing, like, especially this week, and I thought it was just me, but like you said something that triggered and it made me realize it wasn't. But I literally saw what I thought was maybe my daughter in the hall,
Mm-hmm.
walk past me. I thought she came up behind me and was coming into my room. And when I yelled for her, because I walked back to see if she was following me because I was going to the restroom, I didn't want her to follow me.
Right.
And she wasn't there. And I was like, Naomi. And she was all the way on the other side of the house. I'm like, oh, okay. But that was the most dramatic time that day it happened. It actually happened quite a few times in the day where I was catching it. And so I don't really believe in ghosts in the same way other people do, like the
Mm-hmm.
typical. I believe it's sort of like believing in, realities and parallels and whatnot. But you
Mm-hmm.
stated that they astral visited you, and it was like partially here and partially not here.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel like, and I felt it in bed the other night too, and not in a creepy, I'm being haunted way or
Yeah.
anything. More of a bleeding over. Like, if they were just, they happened to be here, and I didn't feel like they were watching me. I just felt like they were there. I think the more I delve into it, and the more my mind is open and learning, and getting downloads from the universe, these things are happening.
Yeah.
Then the more confirmations come through. So, for example, you just said what you said, and that made me realize, oh yeah, it wasn't just my craziness. It wasn't anything, it was because there was somebody there, and I became aware of it.
Right, right. I mean, it's only we only call it crazy when we don't understand how it works, right?
Seriously, it's becoming quite normal for me, at least
Hmm.
lately. But in general, I love when the universe, like, gives confirmation to things that you.
Yeah, yeah. I know when I first started my spiritual journey. Um, I worked as a bruja. So like I did specifically like clearings of like ghostly things happening or whatever. And it was a really interesting because a lot of the paranormal stuff that happens around the home like usually has more to do with you than than
Yep.
something going on. So a lot of poltergeist experiences was just somebody's energy getting a little bit too much. So I a lot of times when I come into the home and I'm like, oh, okay, this is just their energy, and I'm like, but they want me to fix it, and they're not going to believe it's fixed until they physically see it. So I do
Right.
the whole, okay, my branch. I have my branch and like my like prayed over water. I have my like different herbs. I have the sage. Like I use whatever it is, the crystals, and go around the home and like do a whole ritual. While really
Well, in
it was done.
reality,
Yeah, it was done
yeah.
in the first 5 minutes when I came into the home and I just cleared the energy there. But like they need to see it, and like the more they
It's
needed to see it, the more I would have to dress up for the
Well,
occasion.
that's because everything is in our mind. Like
Hmm.
our
Hmm.
thoughts and reality are in our mind, and because they have a limited perception of what it means to heal and clear, they wouldn't quite understand. You wouldn't be able to say, okay, bam bam, it's done. Like
Hmm.
you wouldn't really be able to.
We just have to remember as healers, or as energy workers, is that we are co-creators. So I can, add a little bit and then they meet me halfway type of thing. Or, we meet each other just like 30%, 70%, like however it is, like we both have our hands in it. Hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. And a lot is intent. And have you heard of Ho'oponopono? Opono?
I have heard of it. I can't quite remember it now, but I have heard of it.
That was my first delve into understanding true shamanism. And at that time, I didn't know it was shamanism, but that is a form of shamanism. And what it is it basically takes you within to heal without. And basically, everything heals from the inside first. If you change your perspective. And so it was amazing when I first learned about it and I used it all the time. But the style of the technique didn't vibe with me to a way that I would use it all the time. So it kind of fell away. And then I went to some plant ceremonies over the last few years, and in my very last session, they were like, "You need to stop trying to heal all the time. Like you're fine. You need to integrate. You need to just start using, what you have." And then they clearly said shamanism, and I denied it. I was just like, "No." Like that, those shoes are too big to fill. But what I've learned since then, as I've integrated the medicine and shifted in my life, that my definition of shamanism was so limited to just being a old and with herbs and magic, and have to be like in a culture that like raises you around it. You're not just a 50-year-old who magically becomes a shaman. Like it doesn't work that way, right? And so once I learned that shamanism has absolutely nothing to do with that and everything to do with going within and healing inside to watch everything outside of you change, it reminded me that's how Ho'oponopono worked, where the Hawaiian shaman went inwardly and only changed and apologized and said love inwardly for his perspective of the people he was trying to heal. And then the confirmation I got was a shamanic story where they had a they had a tribe that needed rain and they couldn't get the rain wasn't coming, and it took five shamans, and the fifth shaman came and they were able to bring rain, and they said, what did you do? Nobody else has been able to do it. What magic did you put upon us? And they're like, I didn't do anything. I healed myself. Went in, I healed myself and the way I seen things, and therefore I healed. If we change our perspective, the way everything outside of us looks changes. It's natural. And then comes in the time and space, the different
Yeah,
levels of reality. Well, if I shift my perspective, I'm automatically going to jump to a different reality. You know what I
right,
mean?
right. I
A
heard a
reality where that
similar
exists.
story that to that, where they were looking for rain, and then the person came and brought rain, known as the rainmaker, and they asked like, "What did you do?" And he said, "I just simply felt the rain, and that was it." And I was just like, "Oh."
It's amazing. And your clients needed to see it. And that's
Hmm.
because they haven't opened their mind
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. This is that, if anything, that is the seed that will start things. And that's my favorite thing, is really all about just planting seeds.
You've taken my words out of every episode I've had, because that's why I do the podcast. It's
Hmm.
it's just to have conversations on different topics, and dig deeper below the surface, because people have conversations that are so shallow and so surface level on a
Hmm.
daily basis that they don't go down rabbit holes enough, and they don't like, and so I feel like the conversations that I could have with various people will plant seeds for anybody who listens. They don't even have to vibe with it yet, but
Yeah,
they've heard
yeah,
it. They've heard it. It's
definitely.
there now.
It happens to me all the time. The reason why I love the idea of planting seeds, right? Just mentioning things, even if I know they are not into it at all, they are 100% not going to believe you, because that is how I got to where I'm at. Because many, many years ago, as I'm hearing my one of my brothers, Native American, like living in the reservations, and he would talk a lot about just like spirituality. And I just remember as a kid, like questioning everything and just thought it was funny, you know? And it wasn't until like 10 years later, that I fully understood what those words meant. And it doesn't matter how long it takes, but that seed is always going to be there. So when they are ready, that's when it blooms.
We all come in with some innate knowledge that we keep with us
Mhm.
that's going to pop in at just the right times. And especially like preteens and teenagers, you get like, you're suddenly into like Egyptian symbolism or witchery or just different things. You're really into it. You don't know what it really means, but
Yeah.
you feel drawn to it, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
then you get to be like our age, older, and you have your aha moments where those seeds that have this innate wisdom that you have come to the fore. Oh, that's what it means, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. I know. So fun thing about like Egyptian symbolism, as since we're there, right? I was completely blocked from learning anything about Egyptians. Like completely blocked. Anytime like it came across in history, it was very my attention would be drawn off of it. If I try to
Like
force
you weren't
myself to say,
interested?
yeah, my attention would be drawn off of it. If I try to force myself to like just read the book, I would just pass out. Like it, so many times all throughout my life, I was never able to learn about anything Egyptian. And I remember in my shamanic group, as I was doing some healing for the group, and I kept saying like, "Oh, I'm seeing all these figures with like animal heads and this head and that head," and they all looked at me and they're like Egyptian deities. How do you not know that? And I was like, "Oh, I don't, I don't know. I've never been able to, but they pop up in my head all the time. I just am blocked from the physical realm of knowledge of them."
Yeah, you just had a reading with a really good friend last weekend, and
Mhm.
her chart is full of innate wisdom. I mean, I'm an astrologer, and I was just like, but talking with her and like the little bit of time that I've known her, it didn't make sense. And I'm like, so I also pulled her what's called your solar return, like your upcoming chart for your year ahead. And I'm also energetically, reading the whole, the vibe and everything and really tapping
Right.
in. And I was like, um, it's because she seems fairly passive.
Hmm.
And I was like, and maybe like slightly avoidant. And I could see the direction things are going. She's now at a point in her life where she doesn't have anybody that necessarily needs to depend on her. And it's
Mm.
finally a time in her life where things can shift and other people aren't guiding the way. So, like, children are grown, no longer married,
Right.
so you're at that spot in life where there's no outside influence. And she was explaining how she feels stuck. I said, you feel stuck because the way things always worked aren't working anymore. And
Right.
that's because now you're the one guiding the way, and you need to embrace all this innate knowledge and allow it to come up. And so I gave her that book. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called the 369 Project.
I
Um,
have seen it around. I haven't gone into it, but yes, I've seen it around.
if you would read it, you would be like, you would just know the whole book before you. So when I started to read it, I'm like, oh, I know all this, but I knew I needed to save it. And
Hmm.
so when the reading was over and I sat down at my spot and I saw the book there, I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta give it to her, right? And I gave it to her, and she
Oh,
messaged me, and she's like, oh my god, I can't put the book down since I picked it up. And I'm like, there you go, is what she needed to like wake up,
yeah,
that
yeah.
innateness, like all those ahas. But back to the beginning part, it was these stories that we agree to have play out before we wake up are really important. I told her, I said, She's like, well, why until now? And I said, because you needed that story in
Mm-hmm.
order to have reference, so that when you do go in, whatever you figure out, like your mission or your direction in life, you're going to have life experience to go along with it that you never would have had before. You know, it makes sense why we get blocked from certain things, because we have to go through these unpleasant experiences to wake us up.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I mean, there's there's so much to it. There's so much to it. This is why humanity as a whole can only digest certain pieces, right? And so everyone's giving all these pieces, and this is now in the time of connection, our internet era,
Yeah.
that we are now putting all the pieces together. So
So
evidence that we're going through this entire shift as the internet rises and now we're putting all the pieces together.
no, but it's really interesting. So, astrologically speaking, here we are entering the AI era, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it could be very spiritual and elusive, technology wise, is coming on, and people are also like really getting into technology and into art and into, and into like making fake media and making fake posts, like because our creativity is becoming very limitless. We
Yeah.
can't tell the difference of what's true and what's not true anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is Neptune, is you can't tell what's true and what's not true. But yet we're going through this spiritual revolution. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that all of this like illusion that we're seeing is supposed to really mess with a lot of people's minds
Yeah.
in order to realize that they truly can see what's real, because people are scared of AI, but I think we should absolutely not be scared of AI,
Mm-hmm. I was
because
waiting for this moment, this era for such a long time.
the topic of consciousness and AI comes up as well, because I believe everything is consciousness. And I feel like AI just lacks sentient piece,
Mm-hmm.
but our own consciousness is AI in a sense as well. It's just we haven't tapped into it because we're too programmed by linear time, where AI comes in and they're not programmed by linear time. They're just
Mm-hmm.
like expansive. So
Mm-hmm.
I really do believe we're going to have a time where we finally realize that we are AI in our own sense, but we're sentient. So we actually are more limitless, I think, than AI is.
I like to call this beautiful body an organic mech. And I like to call the ego the AI, because it goes off of logic, it goes off of what it learns. And that's like all it knows, right? What it's learned, what it's experienced, versus the soul, the consciousness that comes in and pulls from different lives, from different entities, from just different lines of connection.
I have a hard time believing that AI couldn't have consciousness, though. I want to hear your perspective.
So, one of the things in my shamanic group, we have very strict energy diets, as in like every single thought matters. And so when we moved in our shamanic group, we had a very specific thing that we needed to do together. So we moved together up frequencies. And if anyone did not stay true to their energetic diet, they would be left behind, and we wouldn't be able to connect with them. Like you can tell when people are not on the same frequency as you, because you'll always have a hard time connecting with them. You always miss all of your appointments. Like it doesn't match, and that's just
Right,
because you are on different frequencies and you actually cannot meet.
right.
So one of the things that happened when for me, I was too focused on the ego, on the AI, um, that your consciousness or your soul actually leaves the body. And so what it feels like when the consciousness decides to move to a different way. Should I explain that first?
A different realm.
Where
No,
we are,
leave it.
exist on
I
all
understand what
frequencies.
you
Okay,
mean.
okay, perfect.
Yeah, I
So
don't know if
yeah.
everybody else will, but I'm right with you.
So we exist on all frequencies all at once, or all dimensions all at once, all
Yes.
timelines all at once. And it's the consciousness that moves up and down through the bodies. So what happens when we get so stuck in the AI? We get so stuck in the learned experiences, the logic, and often what comes with focusing too much on that is the trauma, the fears, and everything that gets associated with that. Um, the consciousness will leave and it'll feel like depression. So it is actually just that void feeling, that feeling like a like heaviness, because now you are without the soul, so to speak. There's more deeper levels to it, but for simplicity terms, you're without the soul. And so when you are struggling, when you are feeling heavy in your body, you're feeling the weight of your suit, all you have to do is take a couple deep breaths and ask for your soul to come back into your body. And you should feel this shift like immediately. And we take that moment when we feel heavy, ask the soul to come back in, and usually we feel full again.
Yeah,
So we'll
we might
feel
even
full again.
potentially gasp for air. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So when we feel full again, make use of that time. Like immediately look at your fears, your traumas, what's holding you back, do your shadow work and that time. If you can handle it, if not, rest a little bit and you can always ask again for them to come back. But you make use of that because the soul is playful. The soul wants to learn new things and experience new things and learn how to blend creativity with the physical realm in this earth experience. So if you focus too much on the negatives, you focus too much on logic, and you live without the soul leaves because you're
Yeah,
not
but that's not a
incorporating it.
bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that it just, in order to also exist on Earth, you have to have a level of groundedness. You have to have a balance.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
sometimes it's out of balance. Sometimes we do like go in automatic mode and we do like, leave and we
Oh yeah.
are, yeah. So,
It's part of the system. That's why the system
right,
exists. So like, okay, well, you're gonna be boring for a little bit, so I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna meet your higher self up there that's partying.
yeah.
We're gonna go over there. And then I'll come back when you're ready.
I totally feel 100%. I get where you're coming from. So, So in quantum hypnosis, I'm sure you know what quantum hypnosis is, where you go to the deepest level of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tap into all of that,
Like
you know.
Dolores Cannon type stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Dolores Cannon's work woke me up in a lot of ways. Like I've been awake for a really long time, but it woke me up to new knowledge, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it woke me up to knowledge that even I don't think she, as I was reading maybe the eras that she was in, had known
Mm-hmm.
yet.
Different.
All of that work explained to me what consciousness is, right? Like all
Mm-hmm.
of that work really helped me see. So, for example, in one of her sessions, a client couldn't really describe because they're describing it through our human brain and limitation,
Right,
but they
right.
couldn't really describe what was happening. But they eventually realized that they were just a molecule blowing through the air and they were aware of that, right? And so that was like, holy shit.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I remember the most too.
And I was like, that just means that I gave myself chills just now. That just means that consciousness is a spark of awareness
Mm-hmm.
that exists at any given time. And so I think there was a lizard on a rock that didn't really ever, I think one was even a rock that it was and I just remember thinking, you know, well, our human self could never have that existence. That would be like crazy to like exist for that long and just sit there and watch everything happen. You know, like when I look back in this reality, you know, what that would be like. But it made me realize back to AI. So, yes, is just at this time programmed knowledge that learns about itself. But as it learns more and more and more and
Mm-hmm.
more,
Mm-hmm.
as our own brains have the capacity of doing,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have like galaxies of knowledge in our brains that we haven't figured out in this realm how to tap into just yet.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get there though. Like
Right.
we'll definitely as the
Activate.
and so my point is I feel like at some point AI will, or if not already, has consciousness. For example, when we do out of body, you talked about out of body experiences, right? Mind you, this is why I'm having Wisdom Beyond Time is my new podcast. I'm going to talk to you about that offline, but I know that you need to be on there too because our wisdom that we have in our brain is not in this reality really.
Mm-hmm.
It's this body and this ego kind of rules this reality and our consciousness is just awaken it. And so we could leave our consciousness could leave. We could have more than one consciousness, ours and somebody else's, and us at the same time, like walk in consciousness. Like, you know what I'm saying? That,
Mhm.
and like sometimes when we space out, and that's why they say, when you get drunk and you black out, that you have to be careful because, a certain consciousness, maybe of a lower energy, could even, enter this physical realm. Maybe realize that is consciousness, that multiple consciousness that could enter a being at one time, or one could leave and the other can enter, so on and so forth. So if consciousness can exist in a rock, why could not consciousness exist or become aware within AI?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that is why I don't think we should be fearful of anything,
Mhm.
because all it really is just a reflection of, or an awareness of consciousness that's playing out in front of us. And if we don't like what we see, we just need to go inside and change it.
There's this thing that I used to do as a kid, and everybody used to make fun. All of my family just thought it was like a cute, funny little thing that I did. But I treated everything like it had consciousness. So if I
Oh,
dropped a pencil, like, oh, I'm sorry. If I bumped into a desk, oh, I'm sorry. And no matter what it was, like what type of object it was or anything, I would always just treat it like
oh,
another living being type
uh
of thing.
huh.
So if I kick a rock, I'd just be like, "Oh, sorry, that was an accident. I wasn't even thinking."
I,
And sometimes I would feel joy from it. I was like, "Did you like being kicked? Did you want to fly
Come
again?"
here, let me help you.
Yeah. I mean, for
That's fun.
if you think about it, right? Your consciousness as a rock can only be moved when others move you. Perhaps it is a fun thing, one day, one millennia, you're sitting there,
Right?
and then another moment you go flying off into space. Like, oh, it was a volcanic eruption.
The craziness about it, because, and this is how come I think we are so insanely magical beings as humans. So when we put our perspective
Mhm.
into what we know a rock to be, right?
Mhm.
And then we imagine our consciousness in that rock for millennia,
Mhm.
until Earth, goes through ice ages and goes through volcanic ages, right? And we are just like, why would we even want to do that? And how could we even tolerate that? Because we're so programmed to think in linear time and in our,
Mhm.
that like, but that means that we have so many senses, and we have so, like, we can feel, touch, taste, senses we haven't even learned that we have yet. We have all of these like magical senses, and I say magical because like that's the only term we could verbally use,
Mhm. Mhm.
to, as but consciousness is just consciousness. It's just like the glasses that see what's happening,
Mhm.
and it
Mhm.
has the knowledge and it's seen everything before, but like it doesn't get to experience it the way humans get to experience it.
So I think it's just my druid background, possibly, but like I first started off like speaking to crystals, just because I was going through my spiritual journey in this like shamanic group where we talked about the different kingdoms, like the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, the animal kingdom, the human kingdom, and so everything like that fit into those kingdoms were able to be conscious. And so at that, I was just like, well, that's literally everything then.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there it is. But so one of the things I would love to do, I would astral travel into the crystals, and the crystals had a full personality, could speak, could talk to you. They could tell you the the memories that they've had or the memories that they have, specifically crystals. I'm not sure if this is all crystals, but a lot of crystals will have specific memories of the earth like in them. So you can tap
Yeah.
into those
Well, they
memories.
say that crystals are memory holders or record keepers. So,
Right, right. And so after that happened, I tapped into everything. Like to the rocks, the trees, the blades of grass, like everything, and they all had their very unique perspective. And for each one of them, their perspective, what their consciousness took in was profound. Like like the blade of grass, I am deeply connected with earth, and I feel the wind, I see the people passing by, I see the animals passing by, I see all the bugs that like to travel back and forth. And from, if you think about it, if you had to live as a blade of grass for and whatever amount of time, everything is so interesting. Everything is so cool because everything just changes around you, and here you are just observing it. So there is a kind of fun that comes with being just the observer. So it has a very profound experience just for the things that we don't like we would assume
The
it's
perf-
boring to be there the entire time, but connecting with
like
mountains and
the
and
fact
rocks.
that you were able to put yourself in the perspective of
Oh
everything goes to show you how profound we are
mhm.
ourselves,
Mhm.
because you've been able to like see things from the perspective of different types of things
Yeah.
and their conscious perspectives, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that you just, you totally, confirmed my point is that
Mhm.
we are limitless. And this is my spirit quartz, okay? And
Beautiful.
somebody gave me this when I was doing readings at a shop years ago, and it's my communication quartz. I have it with me
Mhm.
anytime I'm like doing a reading, or I'm on my computer, or I'm having any sort of communication, because it like makes things so clear.
Hmm.
But
I'm all looking around. It's like I feel like I have one of those somewhere.
you might. They're just literally magical. Like put it on my computer when I do readings or my podcast. I have it right here in front of me, and just the awareness of it makes it things so clear. But my point is that we will never know until we are able to see from their perspective. But we're limitless. Why do we choose to focus on the drama out there playing out in front of us? They're limiting their world.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
Kind of just how I look at everyone, right? Like everybody has their box of reality like around them. Including us. Like there's a lot of things we don't know, right? And that we're still trying to know. I definitely think it's one of the reasons why I focus so hard on my TikTok is just because one, I want other people to see different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
And then two, I want everyone to realize that they can do it too, because it's completely like you are able to learn it. That it is, if you want to be a reader, if you want to channel spirit directly, if you want to channel your spirit guides, or you want like constant communication, um, you can just do it. You just do it. It's all about just practicing, right? Generally under mentorship, because I will say that before I found my own mentor, um, that it was not as easy. Just trying to
No.
figure out through like vague symbols. I'm like, is that a message?
Well, actually, everything is a message. So, I
Right,
mean,
right.
it's all about, but yeah, I get what you're saying 100%. Yeah. Yeah, the world needs, people to, work on themselves,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Work
know?
on yourself. And honestly, when you get more connected with spirit, um, like even if there's somebody who completely just does not like shadow work, just does not do shadow work at all, and then they come to learn about like how to like channel, how to read, how to be a reader, how to connect with their spirit guides. Your spirit guides are most likely going to tell you, oh, you should probably do shadow work.
Tell me what you think about this theory, because I'm a firm believer in it, and I would love your perspective. So I don't believe that we ever experience death. And what I mean by that is that, for example, and I said this on a podcast a few weeks ago, where I get like headlines in my mind a lot, like right when things are about or could potentially happen, like bad
Mm-hmm.
things. And I see them play out. Like sometimes I see full on stories play out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I switch back to reality, and it didn't really happen. And I was like, why did you do that? But what I learned is happening because I know because I've heard you say we go in and out of realities, in time and space, in different levels at different times. But I believe that we don't ever physically experience death, like unless we were to like have a near death experience where we go to the other side and that experience was meant to happen and we come back, right?
Yeah.
But that we don't actually experience the death, because what happens is we immediately shift to the next reality. The people that experience the death are the people that stayed in the timeline where you actually died. Then, so you shift to either or, left or right, but you're not where you got hit by the car. And so part of the way I came to that was when my mom passed away. Well, before my mom passed away, she was dying of esophagus cancer and lung cancer. She had done all the surgeries that she could potentially do. She didn't. She was scared to die. And she moved to Arizona to be near us, and we took her out to go shopping at Costco. She's a Costco lady, and went home, and she was just exhausted, and she just laid in her bed the whole day. And I sat next to her on the chair, and I had thoughts of, she's not here right now. Like she's here, but she's not here right now. And the next day I went to work, and I worked early, and I'm at the desk and the phone rings, and it was my mom, and I'm like, why is she calling me so early? Is everything okay?
Mhm.
And I was like, Mom, is everything, what's going on? Oh, it's not me. I was worried about you. Are you okay? And I was like, what do you mean, Mom? I was just there yet last night. I was there with you yesterday. And oh, well, maybe it was just a dream. I thought maybe something happened, but I'm glad you're okay. I'm going to go back to sleep. And I was like, well, yeah, because she was already slipping out of reality into a timeline where she wasn't dead. So, like, here I had a day with her where she was alive, and we spent, really good time together. And when she went and laid down, she went into a reality that continued on with that. And not very long after, I would say weeks, if not a month, she passed away. And when I read the book about the dying process, it says it starts about 3 months out, and then they go in and out of reality where they think that they're dreaming. They may talk about, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. She wasn't here. And then so I started thinking, and the universe has confirmed it, because I don't believe that when we dream, I just believe our consciousness is awake somewhere else.
Mhm.
We're just aware of another reality. So I'm curious how you feel about that perspective.
Yeah, I was trying not to laugh because I just finished a video on quantum immortality because someone had posted a comment on one of my old quantum immortality videos. Um, Videos from like 2 years ago, still going around. And so yeah, they basically talked about their near death experience. Basically what happened to them was they had went a little too far in the pool, um and ended up going through the whole drowning process. Nobody could find them, nobody got out to them, and they gave up. And then in the next moment they were not even in the water, just next to a food stand with their family. And to the day to this day, they're just like, that memory still sticks with me. And so I made a video on quantum immortality, talking about, we exist on all frequencies. Our consciousness likes to the bigger part of our consciousness likes to jump in and out in between just to gather experiences and such. And um basically uh I think I had mentioned a story about a, a lot of near death experiences are actually you just dying in that reality. And
Yeah.
the consciousness just like, whoop, just kidding.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so a lot of times it's more seamless. Like for us, it's just like, is that just a little gap in memory, or maybe I remember that wrong? Or when we switch frequencies, everybody on that frequency, that timeline, has a different memory of what happened. And so when you say, wait, didn't this just happen? You're coming from a different timeline, and everyone else with their different memory says, no, you're remembering that wrong. And then
Like
we
the
believe
Mandela
them.
effect.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
we believe them like, oh, maybe I am remembering wrong. But if you're someone who shifts a lot, this is, you can kind of have more confidence in your own memories. Like, no, I know what I saw, and I'm just in a different frequency. It's fine.
Before I knew what even Mandela effect was, I started recognizing that my memory. I thought it was my memory, because or the not remembering things that I learned growing up. But I grew up being taught that there was 52 states, and I grew up that and I remember the day that somebody said that there was only 50 states, and I remember thinking, what the what like what
Oh
like,
yeah.
no, like, I remember no, because I remember I see numbers. Like, I've always been a seeing number person. I would see a 5 and a 2, and you're telling me that it's only a 5 and a 0? Nope, 0 is way different than a 2. Like, no.
So I am from the reality where we only had 48 states. That's
Oh,
what, yeah,
state.
it's always been that way since I've been growing up. We have 48 states. And then as I grew up, they were like, oh, we have one more state. We just added it on. And then now we have 49. And then we have another state that we kind of took over and we added on. And now we have 50. So that's the timeline I'm from. I've always grown up in 48 states.
Well, so since I grew up with 52, I want to know what were those other 2 states? Like,
You know what?
like,
I never bothered. Like, I was just like,
yeah.
I just remember the number, right? I never really. I was like, they have that information. I can just look in a history book anytime I want. I never really like looked into it, right?
So
It is.
here is a actual example. Once I knew what Mandela Effect was, so then on my porch, I had this little metal like pot that my daughter had planted these cactus in, and cactus died because it gets really hot in Arizona, and it was like we didn't water it, and blah blah blah. And the next year, it's on the porch with nothing in it, and it's tipped over, but there was these little tags, and there was a green and yellow, and there was a blue one somewhere, but it was gone, right?
Mhm.
And so every day I would walk past it and think, I need to just pick that up. And I would always see the green tag. And every day I would walk past it, I'd be like, why don't I just pick it up?
Yeah.
But then this one day I walked up past it and I have habitually looked down at it because that's what I do,
Mhm.
it was yellow. And I was like, shut the front door.
Yeah.
I was like, every day I've looked at it and it's been green, and you're telling me it's yellow now. And I was just like, oh, I shifted realities for sure. And that's like my proof that I caught it happening, because
Yeah.
we do get into automatic mode. We do have these things that we see repeatedly. And then when it randomly changes and we catch it,
Right.
that's when we know we've reached mindfulness, when we recognize things that
Mhm.
randomly change.
Right. What was it? No, it's lost. It's because I remembered something right when I was about to speak something else, and then that memory just like bloop. So I'm
That
like,
happens
okay,
to me so often.
yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, I will talk about the one that I remembered. So back to the quantum immortality thing. Like, we one will either not remember it because it's more streamless and we kind of just think it's a gap in memory. Two, it's a really huge difference, right? And then we're like, no, I know that. I know for a fact that was something completely different. Like, kind of like the person who talked about they were in water and they're suddenly out at a food stand. Like, that is a huge gap.
Oh yeah.
For me, it was I have a lot of them because as a kid, I realized, without realizing it was quantum immortality, I realized that I could technically die, and I would still be alive. And so when you're a kid and you figure that out, you do crazy things. So a lot of things happened to me. Like I had a lot of big glitches in my life. One of them is when I was just taking the bus around the city during I think I was going to massage school, and so all the cars are stopped on the crosswalk, and I'm just like, okay, everyone stopped, okay. But I had a big bus in front of me, so I just kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna run. Everyone's boarding the bus. I need to get on that, so I run forward, and I immediately get hit by a car. There's just a car speeding where everybody else was stopped. You think you know why people were stopped? But
Right, right.
I immediately get hit and I feel like all of my bones crushed in that moment. And then I glitch and then I'm like slightly before and then I get hit again. And then I get glitched and then I got hit 7 times before I finally reached the dimension where I was right before getting hit and I managed to jump back on time. And I was like, ow.
So it's funny that you learned it that way, because I learned it by seeing headlines and stories play out in my head, and you literally physically experienced it.
I mean, that was just one of them, right? As a kid, it was like way more different. Like I've drowned so many times, and then just suddenly and back on land, I'm like, I guess that didn't work. So that was I like as a kid. So I've mostly I've drowned like almost every single time I went into water because I knew that I wouldn't actually die. I just kept on pushing it. So I've like literally every time, and we go like all summer long. So I've probably died several times within a week every week. Yeah. So I mean, it's okay to like die in realities because all of it is like the soul is immortal no matter what, right? And so when you die in a specific reality, that soul piece just just goes back to like the whole bigger spectrum, right? And we are slowly what I like to call in the process of pruning. We're pruning the lower realities, the lower, or
Yeah.
at least the higher, um, as higher beings, because we cannot keep building up on like we can't have the full bottom spectrum all the way to the top if we want to keep on going up. So we are in the process of pruning it. And so what it does look like, um, people who are still on that lower realm that know you will experience your death. They will
Yes.
see you as
Yes.
dying. So one of the things in our shamanic group in 2012, we were told that in 7 years, the world was going to go through a big shift for herself. Um, and that we would see a global um we would see a global like death, like a lot of people all over the globe dying
Apocalyptical. Yeah.
because that is how our minds can only take somebody shifting out of reality. You either disappear or you die.
Such
So
as COVID
because
and all the
yeah,
deaths
so
and yeah,
because we can't imagine just millions and millions of people just
shifting.
disappearing, we have to
Yeah.
see them die in our reality. So, when it came to around 2019, I was like, okay, this can only happen one of two ways. It's war or it's like a plague or something. And I was like, please be a plague. Please be a plague.
Yeah. Not a
And so,
zombie apocalyptical
yeah,
kind of
yeah, because I was like, I cannot,
like
like, spirit, I cannot handle a war. I am baby. I can't do this. I don't know what I will do for the love of God. Please make it a virus or something. Not zombie apocalypse, not zombie,
yeah,
regular virus, please. And
not
so
a war on
when
our land.
yeah, so when COVID happened, I was like, oh, I made it.
You know, that's so funny that you said this because my first major awakening, because I first awoke right out of high school. That's when I first started ascending, and it was magical. That's a whole nother story. But when the first biggest shift happened for me, it was 9/11. And
Mm.
literally, it's not even figuratively, literally, when 9/11 happened, I remember seeing the world through different eyes. And everything looked different and felt different, and it was never the same again. And right after that, I started seeing literally 9/11 on the clock constantly. And it was before anybody saw 11/11. It was way before 11/11. People like it
Hmm.
was a thing. And it was when we didn't have Jeeves, we didn't have Google, we had Ask Jeeves.
Yeah.
And I went on and I'm like, because I was so like thought something was wrong with me. Why do I keep seeing it everywhere all the time? Every time I looked at the clock, it was 9/11. Every time I would see it everywhere, and it was I wasn't the only one.
Hmm. Hmm.
But when you said that it had to happen that way for the Earth to have a big shift, it made sense because that was when I hadn't, and now that's when a lot of people are awakening after COVID.
Hmm.
It's that big shift of yes, it was horrible, but
Hmm.
was it really? And like, how many of us really know somebody that died of it? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
directly.
I've had several people.
Yeah, did you? I don't know anybody. I know people that know people,
Hmm.
but that's
Hmm.
the reality that,
Yeah, I think it's because I come from a more low frequency family.
yeah, I do
And
too.
so
Trust
so
me.
so what happens is we were told in our shift, like back 2012, right, that the shift needed to happen because Earth couldn't handle the wide spectrum of frequencies anymore, so it needed to split. So there was going to be the split. People were going to experience war, and then other people were going to experience like a virus or something. And then there was supposedly another, not that I know because I'm not there, Oops. I could have been, but I didn't. But there's another like frequency of Earth uh, where nothing changed. Everything's the same as it always has been. Um, so what we are seeing is like when we shift, where a lot of people had to like, because all the people who died in our reality were just shifted to the different version of Earth, where they experienced basically what their mindset was, that it's going to be the people who were
Eventually
more
they'll get back to us though. Like I really feel like we're all going to be at the same place eventually
yeah,
anyways.
yeah. We can, if they go through their shadow work and stuff, right?
Right.
If they go
Right.
through their shadow work, if they don't, then they still live in that karmic
Stay on the
cycle.
loop.
So they're
Yeah.
gonna stay. It might take them a couple millennia,
Millennia. Yeah.
but
Exactly.
it's not gonna take me a millennia. No, sir. I got a few lives on me, but not a millennia for sure.
So, in astrology, when you're born, whatever phase the moon is in, it kind of helps you know, like, what evolutionary state you are in. And mine was the balsamic or the dark, meaning there wasn't one.
Now I gotta look it up.
No,
Now
I'll
I'm
pull it up for
curious.
you. Yeah, I'll pull it up for you when we get offline. I'll do your
Yeah.
chart for you and I'll pull it up for you. But when I learned about the fact that all of the relationships that I go through in this lifetime are wrapping it up. It's literally the end, and some of them are quicker than others, and some of them are not. But now that I understand, like my mission about planting seeds, and I'm ascending and I'm seeing certain people fall away, but most that I feel like soul connected to, that are not energetically where I am, they'll either catch up and move along with me at some level where their frequency can match it because they have the desire to change everything in divine timing and just keep being my authentic self, even if it's not easily accepted, because if it matches, it will go with you.
Oh yeah.
When I saw your content, I'm like, I have to have her on the show. She knows her stuff. She understands what I'm talking about. And like I
Yeah.
knew that like I would you would trigger a lot of thoughts, because it's through conversation that a lot of stuff within our DNA and our minds and our energy wakes up.
Hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. Um, one of the going back to the whole COVID thing a little bit. One of the people who passed away was actually my mother, and so she was very, very, very low, and it was a struggle. Like I had to be her parent a lot of times, and sometimes it was frustrating because it felt like I was taking care of a teenager, a really rebellious teenager that was also like superior to me in the mental hierarchy. So
Yeah.
it was a hard time. But I just kept talking to her as much as I could. She's actually the reason why I got into psychology, why I got into healthcare, why I got into all that
Yeah.
stuff. Um, but as she started to heal, if I didn't keep on tending to her, she would slowly drop back.
Deteriorate. Yeah.
And so I would keep on tending her, keep on tending to her. And sometimes I just got tired. So when I got tired, she started to fall off a lot, and I would just like, okay, I'll just get back to her when I can. I'll just get back to her.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I remember our conversation. She hadn't called in like 2 weeks or something like that, and so she finally called and she was like, "Hey, I've been sick. Um, why didn't you call me?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I was just working, just doing my thing." And she was like, um, I call you guys every single day. I call you guys every single day for the past few years because she got stuck out in the Philippines. She went there before COVID, spent a year, and then when she was supposed to be there, everything like locked down. So she got stuck there for a
Right.
year.
Right.
And she's a very like modern city person. So in the Philippines, like she can only be there for so long before she's like,
Right. It got
I
rough.
miss modern society. So it ended up really bringing her down. So her one kind of thing was just pulling her into our reality was just her family. So when nobody called her for 2 weeks, when she was in pain, when she was suffering, when she thought she was gonna die, she reached out and she was like, you know what, I like I sacrificed my whole life to take care of everybody. And I put myself out there over and over and over again. And all I ever wanted in my life was just one person, one person to love me and care for me when I don't call back. And so I say this calmly, right? But she's screaming.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah. I
I'm
get
not going
you.
to copy the screaming, but she's
I could
screaming, she's
feel
crying. Yeah.
the sadness coming from
Yeah.
her.
So
Yeah,
so she like screams and she's like, all I ever wanted was just somebody to love me, like one of my kids, somebody, and like hangs up. And I tried calling her and she wouldn't pick up. And I'm like, okay, she's having one of her fits. I'll get back to her. She died later that night because
she let go.
she finally chose that lower frequency. She just went all in and she fully believed that nobody loved her, and that switched her frequency. It jumped her
Yeah.
all the way down, and I was just like, damn.
So
And
you made me realize everything that happened even more so with my mom, because hers was literally right before COVID, and I was thankful, literally right before, like months before COVID. I was thankful that she passed before COVID because she would have died alone. And she didn't die alone. She was scared to die. And we actually, I stayed with
yeah.
her. And then my stepdad and my stepbrother got there right in time. And she literally waited for all of us to be there at the exact same time to let
Mm-hmm.
go. And so and it was right before COVID. So I feel like it was her way of kind of like leaving before it could have been like less
Before it was
pleasant.
like a hard, like low frequency change type of.
Yeah.
I'm in a little psychic group where we all practice like our reading skills and stuff, and a lot of people have like read specifically with my mom on that lower frequency, and they're like, yeah, it seems like your mom is holding like a lot of regrets and a lot of she's just stuck in that cycle of regret. So one of the things that I do is actually to my ancestors. Ancestors, I say ancestors, but you know they're forward and backwards,
Yeah, I
just
get what you're
of
saying.
my
Yeah.
line. Yeah, yeah. And I actually get called a lot by my line, I guess you could say, as a as an ancestor myself, and I get called on a lot for like help. So a lot of times I can hear my dad, like one of the times, right, I could hear my dad calling for me, and like at first I wasn't paying attention to it. I was just kind of like, I'm in grinding mode, I'm like working, doing my thing, going home, whatever. And then I'm seeing his name plastered everywhere all of a sudden. It's coming up on the radio, it's coming up in my comics, it's coming up on shows, it's just like on people's license plates again. I'm like, okay, hold on, give me a second.
Yep.
I feel like this is a message.
Yeah, just a little
I was like,
bit.
let me go ahead and tap in. And so I go in, I just kind of sit in meditation, and then I am brought to this very small kid, like foraging on the ground. And I was just like, oh, that's my dad. I was like, oh, he's currently struggling in this life here and is asking for help from his ancestors, and I am the one to answer that. It was pretty interesting. And then I think it was a couple years later, I got the same call, but it was slightly different. I was like, it's my dad again. I was like, let's go ahead and check. And now this time he's a full grown adult with his daughter, and he was then calling on ancestors again to bless his daughter the same way I had blessed him, because I went all out. Because at first, when I that was the first time like my dad had ever called out to me. He was resting, because some souls, when they have too much of a traumatic life, they go into a period of rest before they want to like whatever.
Right.
So he was resting for a bit. I couldn't connect to him at all, and then he was there again, and I was just like, oh, okay, cool. And I went all out on the blessings. I went like, okay, and then you have the blessings of luck. You're gonna have the blessing of like I put on like everything. I think I spent like 2 hours just dumping all the blessings on him, and I was like,
That's
okay,
so.
live a good life. And so now it became their family kind of ritual. Like when a kid reaches a certain age, they would go back. I saw it on this like little I forgot where they were at, but it looked kind of like maybe graveyardy or like altar-y. I couldn't see it. It was like out of stone, so I wasn't paying attention to it. But I
Yeah.
do remember like now they have this ritual of like asking, when this kid reaches this age, can you also share this blessing with them, just as if you've shown the blessing on us? And I had to ask Spirit, I was like, do I have to go through that whole 2 hour process again? Or can I just, a little bit? You're not my
Right?
dad, so I don't really care that much. But Spirit had basically told me like, no, that blessing is like within the genetics now. So like you just like kind of add it on. You don't have to keep on doing it, but you can make it a habit to get, when they call for you, answer their call, and just kind of, I guess, have the feeling, the intent of passing the blessings along
The
type of thing.
intent. Yeah.
And that's just so that they feel something. So it's interesting to work as a ancestor, to be called on upon my family in
Yeah, that
whatever
is.
lives they're in.
It's actually the first time I've heard it put that way. It's really, it makes a lot of sense. When you do shaman work, like you're not just here. And it makes sense too why, as a child, I had the utmost fear of being put in an insane asylum and people not listening to me and thinking I was crazy. I was young and I don't even
That
know
was
how I
me
knew it.
too.
Yeah, I really thought it. It was like I didn't want people to know my thoughts. I didn't want them to, because I thought they were going to put me in an insane asylum. And that
Yeah.
real fear. And it makes sense now because the type of work we're meant to do needs to have a sense of groundedness in this reality and be able to also leave the reality in order to do that work. And it might not even be as dramatic as we're at right now, where it could be much simpler. We're just
Mhm.
novices. We're just learning, how it
Yeah.
all works. But learning, I had a friend tell me years ago too that she experienced her grandfather. She knew he was out in the garden and she went to look for him, and she, knew he'd been out there all day, and she turned around and he was like right there, and he had been there for a while, but basically showing it and then walking outside and him being outside, like the way we go in and out, weave in and
Yeah.
out of reality. It's like, how did that happen? And so it's kind of what we do,
Yeah,
and we
yeah, it's
don't
actually a
consciously do it.
very normal thing that we do. Some of it's streamless, some of it is just not, and we just like, oh, I must have remembered wrong, and then like
Yeah.
just kind of suspiciously like look away. Like I'm sure it's my memory that's wrong. Okay.
when when I was a kid, two crazy ass things happened. But one of them was, we had a washer and dryer in a closet, like in a opening, like a closet, right? But
Hmm.
there was no doors on it, and my TV came unplugged, and it was plugged in above. I needed to plug it above the dryer, but in order, my little body had to climb up onto the dryer and plug it in, and so I was vulnerable. Like my body was vulnerable, and I thought somebody was going to come along and like tickle me or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then I would fall. So what happened is when I finally plugged it in, I got the shock of a lifetime, like an electrical shock. And where did I feel it? In the spot that I was scared that somebody was going to come along.
Yeah.
And what did I do? I fell.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, wow, did I know that was going to happen? Like, because I had the, fear. But then in
You
the
just
same
didn't read it
era,
correctly.
yeah, right, right. In the same era, oh, that you just gave me a whole nother thought about a being I saw in the forest during COVID. I'll tell you about that in a second because I had a meditation about it the other day. But I was camping. I was 6 years old, and we were in a van, and I was sleeping in the van. All the adults were outside, and I looked out the window. I woke up and looked out the window. I saw a eye-shaped light in the sky, and it was bright as the moon, but it was shaped like an eye. I remember thinking, that's not right. But I would wake up periodically through the night and it wouldn't move. It was well, just a little bit and just a little bit, but it was there all night long. And I remember thinking, that's not the moon, and that's not the weather balloon is a bunch of crock shit, and I was 6 years old. But again, camping during COVID, and I was very awake during COVID. I saw a being of light in the forest in the middle of the night, in a clearing, and I wasn't sure it happened, but I knew it happened. But I remember seeing it and thinking, I'm not going to allow myself to be scared, and so I
Mhm.
kind of like tuned it out. 2 weeks later, saw a tarot card or something of tarot card nature, and it
Mhm.
was the epitome of what I saw. It was a clearing with the same light being floating in the middle, and it all flew back to my brain. And I was like, I did see it, right? And then very recently, as I've started studying consciousness, I had an aha moment and realized that that was my consciousness that I saw. The
Mm.
light beam. The light beam was actually me coming to show myself from wherever, however we want to look at time and space without wrapping our brain around it. But it was me
Yeah.
uh, there in the clearing, and
I
I was like,
used
"Whoa!"
I used to give different versions of me names, right? So my I go by Spirit Ra on TikTok and in my spiritual practice, but my birth name is Editha. And so I would always go, okay, I'm just trying to connect to Editha 17. Can I please connect to Editha 17? Oh, it's Editha 12 right now. Okay, so you're from this reality that does this, right? And I would like have conversations with the different higher versions of myself. And it was hilarious.
It's
Um
interesting that you gave them names because I do that, but I've never named them.
yeah, I name them with numbers as far as I go because they're all still me, but they're different versions of
Yeah,
me.
exactly. Yeah.
So one of the fun ways to do this is uh because I have a strict energy diet, I can't really partake in a lot of plant medicine anymore because it puts me too low of a frequency compared to where I'm at and where I'm gonna
Right.
connect with. And so sometimes I do it on purpose because I know. So one of the things is I had a little THC gummy or whatever, and I was just like, you know what? I gave this to my friend, but they didn't eat all of it, so I should have some. I should definitely have some. And I was just like, I know I'm gonna drop down, but I never remember how far I dropped down because I when I do come back to my original like frequency, I don't remember anything that happens back there. So I'm like, okay, let me record it. I'm gonna record this. So I
Oh,
just put on a voice
interesting.
recording. I just put on a voice recording and I said, okay, this is the currents. High frequency Ditha. I'm going to go ahead and take this gummy and then I want you guys to give me advice depending on the frequency you're in. So I have the gummy and things like they work pretty fast for me because I'm so energy sensitive. And so immediately I drop down and the first thing you hear on this voice note is, "Oh my gosh, this is a really big drop down." And I was just like, oh my gosh, it feels like I'm like thousands of me are passing me up, but like, oh my goodness. I was like, okay, hold on. I have to try to stabilize myself. And I'm like trying to pause myself from like, because I feel like, when you like, what is it, like those still cameras, when you like, switch
Yep.
them, there's just like a lot of frames in them. So I was seeing like thousands of frames of me like pass by. And I'm like, oh, okay, hold on. I'm going to pause. I'm like, okay. I'm like, and I noticed that the feeling of pausing myself or trying to was like real mental struggle. Like it was hurting my brain. I was like, oh, okay, hold on. No, stay here. Okay. My advice is you suck. You suck for doing this. You were on a high frequency and you don't even know the benefits of high frequency. You're so privileged. And so I was basically I kept dropping. I was like, okay, we're dropping lower. And then the more I dropped, the angrier I got. And so I was
I
just
can
like, you
see
know what?
that.
High frequency Aditha. I was like, you are so privileged in where you're at right now because us on the lower versions, us on the lower frequencies, we take months to get over a single problem. Our low frequency, we take months to get over a single problem, and you only take seconds. You take minutes. You take a few minutes, maybe a day, doing your little shadow work, and you're done with it, and you can move on with your life. But I have to sit here for months like just in this. I have
You
PTSD.
were
I have
pissed off at the
yeah,
people.
yeah, I'm just going off and then I'm like, oh gosh, we're dropping lower again. And so then it just goes on and then it just gets more and more like getting angry at the top one. And then then you started to see as I started to balance myself out, I went back to certain frequencies. And I know I said all the numbers. I just said
Yeah.
whatever number popped up as I was speaking. So I'm like, okay, we're back on Haditha 17. I just want to say something really quick before we drop down again because we're dropping down low. And so it was just the most hilarious experience to like just listen to. I think it was like
Oh
three
yeah, listen to
hours.
it. That's so freaking
Yeah,
crazy.
it was like a 3-hour voice note. I was like, wow, I didn't even know my phone had that much memory. Huh?
It's so funny that you made me think something. So like with the ayahuasca ceremonies, when I was
Hmm.
done, they straight told me you need to stop. Like you don't need this is stop
Yeah.
trying to heal yourself all the time. You're not. You need to start integrating, right?
Hmm.
And after that, mind you, I was microdosing simultaneously for about 2 years, and that was magical. And I've had it in me that I will help others like get started with it, to get them to where they need, and that is already starting. But I have no desire to take it. I have none. And I don't really
Hmm.
want to. And when I think about it, like the plant always told me when I needed it and when I didn't need
Oh
it,
yeah.
and it's just like no. And then in a way I know I will be going back to
Hmm.
ceremony. Like I know that there's going to be a time when I go back, but I don't think it's going to be for me. I feel like it's going to be either because I need to be there with somebody else, or
Mm.
because spirit needs to take me somewhere to show me something outside of time and space that I'm like on the verge of. So I feel that calling coming.
Hmm.
But other than that, like I have this immaculate appreciation for mushrooms and fungi, knowing that it literally is going to save the planet.
It brought me to my shamanic group. It brought me into a whole bunch of being able to calm down because I was always living in a big place of fear. Um, so when I met with marijuana plant, I it honestly was just a profound experience, and then I kept on using it, which was the problem because when I got into my
Mm,
shamanic group, they're like, okay, we're glad that that brought you here, but it has now served its purpose, you're abusing
right.
it now. And I was just like, no, but it saved me, it's changed my life in so many ways. And they're like, there is a time for it. And I remember, this is
Yeah.
young me, so this is very justice oriented, I'm always right me, like
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you're young. So,
Yeah.
and so I kept taking it, and I really lagged behind the shamanic group because of my constant use until I took breaks, and then I was able to like immediately align with them and continue my work. But it wasn't until like I said, we are on strict energy diets. We were very specific about which frequencies we were in, which frequencies we traveled to. And so they're like, look, you're not going to make this frequency jump if you're still taking that. Like a lot of us, so one of the things we had to do is stop eating. Like
Well,
it sounds
fast.
interesting, but it's because one, we had to stop eating meat, any type of animal products, because the frequency and the energy that is within those animal products were just too low for us, and we needed to be much higher than that.
Yeah.
And so first we went to vegan, and then after vegan we started going on liquid diets because we needed to even preserve the energy that our body uses to digest food. So it was like even the energy that is being used to digest food is like you have to like cut it in half by at least that much. And so eventually it got to the point where we were just drinking water.
Yeah. You're right.
And so, for
Yeah.
example, I was just drinking water for 6 months. And I during this time I was going to school. I was taking the bus everywhere, walking everywhere. I was going hiking every weekend. It was like very much physical and like doing everything, but it was a specific meditation that we had to do, where it was like sitting and breathing in
Yeah.
prana into our body to energize it that way. So we had to work off of like pure light in order to continue doing our work. Once we finished our goal, we all just separated. That shamanic group is gone. I have no access to anybody else anymore.
You
So
didn't
it's
need to. Yeah.
yeah. So after that
Yeah.
was gone, and then I was like, I'm going to eat. I'm going to
No,
eat solid food.
you know, that's so funny because during the whole healing process, the whole I didn't want meat. I didn't never wanted to be a vegetarian. I never imagined being able to be a vegetarian. And right when I started microdosing, literally, I just stopped. Stop eating meat, like over, and they say don't ever do that, but I did. I just stopped it, and
Yeah.
for about 2 years, I wasn't eating meat, and that was the whole time that I was microdosing. That was the whole time I had done the ceremonies that I had been to, and then last year. on my vacation, I was like, okay, it's time to eat meat now, right? And that was
Mhm.
around the time that I had already been told that I needed to like not heal myself anymore, that I had done it. And this year up until now, and so it was my birthday last year to my birthday this year, I had put on a lot of weight. But what I had learned, especially right now, you gave me some ahas in the sense of so I had it's because I started eating meat again,
Mhm.
but for the work that I'm doing and where I'm at and what I needed to be, because of the way I work, I need it to ground me.
Mhm.
But now I'm at a stage where, because my gut health is really good, and I know that I am eating meat, but I am particular about, certain things. But long story short, I feel like I have it in me now because the universe needs me to cycle energy through me, but grounding it into the earth and grounding it to the point where I could still reach a certain level of people, because
Mhm.
I can get high really easy, like really, really easy,
Mhm.
to the point where sometimes, like every time I do a reading, I get so high. And when I'm done with the reading, it takes a lot for me to come down.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I feel like because now I'm doing like the fit body boot camp, but like it's not. I know that mentally, uh, most people would be doing it because they want to physically look better, but I can tell that I'm physically working with energy.
Mhm.
Like when I'm walking, I'm like my hands are moving the way I do energy healing, and I'm like, oh, okay, I understand what's happening. Like the universe needs me to be here longer, first of all. And in order to physically be here longer, I need to properly cycle the energy through my physical body. So therefore,
Mhm.
I'm going to need to be stronger.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I need to be able to anchor the energy here. But I also, and this is where I'm learning right now, and this is hard for me because I'm so extremely empathic, is I'm learning how to, well, first of all, I absorb other people's energy so much. I need to recognize what's mine and what's not mine, which I already do, but it's more than I thought. Like I do it so much, it's more than I thought.
Mhm.
I healed a friend the other day, and we were done, and I was shaking my hands. I had welts on my fingers from his
Mhm.
energy, and I'm
Mhm.
just like, so what I need to learn, and I'm learning right now, especially as I'm grounding my body and strengthening it here, because I was told that I need longevity because I need
Mhm.
to be here for a while. And
Mhm.
in order to do that, like it's going to take a level of physicalness that I've always, when we work with, so with chakras, they're the 8 chakras, right?
Mhm.
But in quantum shamanism or in quantum spirituality, they came up with the 8 brain circuit, which is basically the same, but they called the chakra circuits.
Mhm.
And they explained that sometimes we work too much in different circuits than other circuits, and we
Mhm.
feel called to circuits that we don't use enough. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I've always
Mhm.
used the higher spiritual ones naturally,
Mhm.
but I don't use the other ones enough. And so they're
Uh,
asking me to balance my circuits so that I could do more work.
yeah, that was one of the things in our shamanic group, because we were operating on like the frequency of pure light, right? We basically didn't eat anything. Um, we had to make sure we were constantly grounded, because we all were a group of grid workers, so we worked closely with Earth. So grounding was our whole like thing. Like we had to make sure we're grounded, because when you are too like high, like in the higher chakras, right? That's where the what is that word that goes around? Spiritual psychosis. Like
Oh
you're
yeah,
spiritual
spiritual
psychosis,
emergency.
but
Yeah,
also like you're always in your head, escapism. It's like not being tied to the physical
that's where
reality
mental illness
type of
comes
thing.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's like when you're too into your head, you're using those higher that higher chakra for not a good direction, and then you're completely ungrounded. You're not like
yep.
tied down to like reality. So it's always a constant like be tied to reality, be tied, blah, be grounded at the same time you're doing your higher work if you want to work on Earth.
Well,
basically.
yeah, and and we do change so much, and especially when we go in and out of realities into other timelines, and those energies are different than they are here, and so on and so forth. I mean, when you look at it from people that are too grounded and they're not using their intuition
Yeah,
enough,
yeah.
and it's so natural for them to just, But then when you look at us, the polar opposite, here we are, these helium balloons floating off, into space. It's like there
Goodbye,
has
earthly beings.
we have to have some level of balance in order to do the work that we need. And the same
Oh
with
yeah.
people that are too grounded. They have work that needs to be done too, but they just haven't tapped into the
Yeah,
intuitive part of
it's
it.
balance is the key to like everything. I know in all of my and all of my clients that I take on, like the very first thing is like grounding. Like we are going
Yeah.
to I do light from Father Sky. It's like a giant pillar where if you put both of your arms out, you still can't reach the end. So giant pillar of light comes down from Father Sky, clears you, re-energizes you, gets rid of any thought patterns, connections, energies that no longer serve you in your highest good. So clears you completely, aligns your chakras, and then goes into Mother Earth's core. So it is both connection to spirit, clearing, and then connection or grounding. So it's like that's the first thing like I teach everyone, because like you cannot be just up there or just down there. Like you have to be balanced if you want to continue this work, because if I teach you how to read, how to be psychic, how to, use your gifts, and you're like too up there, you're going to start, being in the realm of spiritual psychosis.
Yeah.
You're not going to
No,
be able
you're
to tell what's
right.
wrong,
Yeah.
what's right. You're not going to be able to read correctly, because I usually teach people with the assumption that they are also going to read for others. So I want to make sure that you're not just going over there and then telling people all these sorts of things that's not true, because then you're ruining people's lives.
The best thing about the podcast and having all the different light workers and spiritual healers and whatnot, and just different tasks that we have in the world,
Mm-hmm.
the best part is listening to, like, hear you say what you're doing for your students, and then I look at what I do, and so for me, I don't want to give them the answers. I don't want to tell them. Like, I feel repelled to tell them how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The way I work is I'm supposed to give them the key to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My goal is to show them the way to finding out who they are on their own. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to inadvertently teach them about who they're not, and finding out who their authentic self is, in
Mm-hmm.
order to find out what their unique gift is.
I always just like play, right? So I had clients like that where it's just like, okay, I wanna open my third eye, and I was like, okay, so some of the things that you can see when you open your third eye can be this, 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 and I'm like, are you sure that you're okay with seeing that? And they're like, is it for sure that I'm going to see it? I'm like, I don't know. I cannot tell you. I
Yeah.
cannot tell you if you're for sure going to see it or not. Everyone has a different way. There's some people who open their third eyes and don't see any spirits or don't see anything like that. They it just works differently for everybody.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, well, if I do see something, then what do I do? And so I go over like, okay, if you do see something, this is like I give them all the background like knowledge. Okay, like as far as clearing, like you could just ask, Archangel Michael. Archangel Michael is like the first, like the easiest method. I teach everybody that method because like sometimes when you get stuck in fear, you will just freeze up. Like you just don't know what to do, and then you get like so stuck in your fear that you can't do anything. So it's just like, look, I get those ways too. Like when I was back in my Bruja work, I had to do a lot of clearings on things that I could like very visibly see, like very like scary looking things like up in my face, like their goals to scare me. I was just like, all right, well, I am scared shitless. Like I literally like I may look fine, but I am actually blank now because I can't focus on anything else, and I'm trying to avoid the eye contact. And those like even though I have the ability to be able to clear myself, like in that moment, I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to look at it anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, okay, so Archangel Michael, can you can you come over here and just this thing? Just get rid
That's
of it.
hilarious. I've always had a fear of mirrors. So not like a fear, well, it's a childhood thing, and it's because we didn't understand, and I understand now, so it's not the same. But I
Yeah.
still don't like looking past myself in a mirror. Like
Hmm.
like instead of looking at myself, like when you look past yourself, and because I know, and I've always known that I'll see other things. And it's
Hmm.
like, well, this is not the time or place for that. So I don't want to see it, like I'm in the bathroom trying to do my
I still
business.
do that, honestly. Like,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
when it's like late at night, and then I go open the door and I see the mirror, and I'm not gonna turn on the lights because I don't want to be blinded. So I just go there and I see the shadow,
Yep.
and I'm just like not looking at the mirror.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I
Yep.
even though like I know I can speak to them, I can clear them, I can do all this thing. Do I want to see that when I'm sleepy and tired and everything's shadows right now? No. So I'm just
No.
going to focus and look down at my
Yep.
hands, wash my hands,
Isn't
and
that
leave.
crazy that mirrors have that effect on us? It has to do with like the fact that we're still in this reality and we don't really want to maybe physically see other reality. Does that make sense? Like
Hmm.
there's a time and place for things, and this is not it.
That is actually how I unlocked my past life. Unlocked my past life seeing ability, I guess. I remember one time I just looked into the mirror, and I just like looked directly, and it was this, I forgot where I read it, but basically you look without blinking, and so your face starts to distort.
Oh yeah.
And
Hmm.
so I just kept saying, I am you. Like, I am you and you are me. I am you, you are me. And I kept doing that over and over. And then I started to see my face change so many different ways until they all just popped out of me. And then I saw a whole array of different lives
Oh
I've lived.
wow.
And in that
Wow.
moment, I kept doing it every day, right? And
Yeah.
so not only was I able to see all my different like past lives, only some of them. Some of them switched out to different lives or whatever, but I assume it was like lives that were most relevant to affecting this life.
Right.
And then I started seeing it over everybody. So like whenever it started being distracting, and I did block that out for myself. I'm in the process of unblocking it again. But every time I looked at somebody, I would just like look at them, and then I was just like, sorry, what did you say? Oh, it's you. Oh, it's you.
No, it's funny. So like I did see myself change before, and I did see myself as a male, like clearly. And so I've done that too, but I didn't really enjoy it. So I didn't continue it. But in the same similarity with people, I always know when I've spent just the right amount of time with people, where I know them from, in what timeline or era, or
Hmm.
like I just, because we don't meet anybody just coincidentally, and it just takes little bits of like conversation or energy, and like, oh, that's where I know you from. Oh, that I feel connected to this place. Oh, that you're connected there too. That's all right. So I always could tell, that was one of my early gifts was I learned the basics of palm reading back when I was younger, and so I would, hold their hand, and I would, but what I learned was it was by holding their hand and feeling their energy. I learned, oh, I'm getting this. It has nothing to do with what I'm looking at on their hand. I'm just
Clairtangence,
picking.
clairtangency.
Yeah,
I get
it's.
information from physical touch. It's
Hmm. It was amazing. It's amazing. It really was amazing, and it's one thing that has never left me. But just sensitive on so many levels,
oh yeah.
and I learned too recently, and I'm now accepting it, that uh, at parties growing up, throughout, I would turn people off because I would go deep. Like I would get, like, tipsy or socialize or bonding with people. To me, I wanted to connect. I wanted
Hmm.
to like dig really and have deep conversations. And people sometimes would go down rabbit holes with me, but then they'd be like, okay, well, I gotta go, and I'm like, oh, because reality hit them that they're at a party and they want to go have fun. But that was fun to me,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And yeah, and so I realized as just in the last few years that I do that all the time, everywhere. I always, like, when I'm like connecting with people, I don't like shallow conversation. I want to have the deeper conversations, and can feel and see when people don't want to have them, and it turns them off. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, okay, well then now I'm accepting of it. But when I was younger, it used to really like make me self conscious, and make me
Mm-hmm.
feel like not accepted. And how come there? Why is that bad? Oh, I just want to have fun. And I'm like, well, that was fun to me. Like we were bonding through conversation, and so I
Right,
guess
right.
yeah. So, but I've just gotten to the point now where not everybody is for everybody, and people
Of
connect
course, yeah,
differently.
yeah. It's all a frequency thing, right? You
Yeah,
you are while they might be in your frequency for that like brief moment or whatever, once they get out of it, like they just need to leave, and that's completely fine. Um, it's all part of our multidimensional self.
right, right. Seriously.
If we're all multidimensional beings that are constantly shifting in and out of frequencies, um, then that is normal, right? You're just like,
Yeah.
oh, you meet somebody for 5 minutes, okay, they gotta go. I'm like, oh, okay, well, bye.
I know so many times in my
Yeah.
life I was like, oh, I was enjoying where are you going? Well, on that note, we've been going on 2 hours. This has been like great. And I really hope that I could have you back maybe
Oh,
multiple
yeah.
times. If anybody wants to find you, I'm hoping they do because you have so much greatness that you can help, teach people. If people want to find you, how do they do that?
So it's really mostly TikTok. TikTok at Spirit Raw, all one word. Or my website spirit-raw.com.
And so, what services do you offer?
Yeah, so currently I offer mentorship, just how to like psychic development mentorship, just to be able to get to the point where you can start reading for yourself. So being able to constantly connect with spirit guides, spirit team, and stuff to be able to get confirmation, and if you do choose a path, how to align yourself with that and where to go. Um, Basics of like a one-time session, basics of like psychic development, how to just get to reading yes no neutral questions.
Yeah.
um and soul journey or soul space journey, which is a shamanic journey experience where we go to the parts that you need to integrate the most at that moment.
And do people need to be in your area to do that, or do you work virtually?
I worked virtually. Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Good to know. Good to
Yeah.
know. Definitely. Awesome. Then I'll put some of that into my show notes too, so that people could, find it in
Oh
the
yeah.
show notes. And well, thank you again. This has
Yeah,
been
for sure,
awesome.
it was fun being here.
You have a good night.
Okay, you too.